Welcome back to the Midlands Rugby Podcast. Phil, how you doing?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Out of practice, mate. It's been a while. We've took 2 weeks off over the Christmas New Year, and then I was busy, and then I was busy again. So this is officially Christmas break over. Have we spoken since Christmas on here? I can't remember. Don't think we have.
Probably not. No.
How was Christmas?
Oh, um, long and quite enjoyable. It's a bit better now. I've got kids again because it
Yes.
makes things a bit more Christmassy. But yeah, it was quite a nice period. Nice to have some time off, and then I come back to even more crappy weather and cancelled fixtures. So
Yeah.
great.
Just what the doctor ordered. Any extra kgs?
No, no.
Impressive. Very impressive. Proud of you. I one or two, three in short. A lot's happened in the rugby world since you've been away. Not much community rugby being
Since
played.
I've been away,
Well, since we've been away,
yeah,
sorry,
thank you.
since I've been away. Yeah, not much community rugby. So if anyone's jumping in to have an update on Midlands rugby, I can tell you there's been nothing played in about 6 weeks, really. So we'll glaze over that for today. But Steve Borthwick has announced his first England squad for the Six Nations, which kicks off in about 3 weeks' time. Initial thoughts, Phil?
I mean, don't think there's any massive surprises in my eyes from what I can see. I think it's good that Lewis Ludlam's been brought in. I like these two new uncapped players in Jack Walker and McGuigan. Courtney Lawes back in after his injury.
Oh, injury. Ben
Uh,
L back in. Seeing Ben L back in is quite good. He's had
yeah,
he's definitely fell out of favour with the old boss with Eddie.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think I can't remember what game it was, but I watched I caught the back end of a game he was playing for Bath, and he was just the best player on the pitch by a mile.
for Saris.
For Saris, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I've just read Bath on here. Uh,
Is that on your to do list?
yeah. um,
He's an absolute animal on the
oh
rugby.
yeah, he was unreal,
Yeah,
and he just looked a class above everyone else on that pitch, and that's in a Saris team full of superstars. So
yeah, exactly. And he on the rumor mill, maybe or maybe not from people that are in the know, but supposedly he wasn't aggressive enough in the old guard's eyes at international level. But I think he's pretty much shown everyone around that he's more than aggressive enough, and he looks like he's genuinely enjoying playing rugby, which is good.
yeah, I think that's something you don't see that often is people actually playing with a smile on their face anymore.
Yeah,
And he is now. There's some backs in there that are absolutely fine. Tuolangi getting another crack of the whip. Not quite sure how long that'll last. You got Hassel Collins from London Irish, Caden
Queens.
Murley from Quins, and
Oh
Finn
yeah,
Smith from Northampton, all uncapped, which is good news. Our mate Elliot Daly's still there.
he's
Um,
having an absolute stormer of a season as well.
yeah. Just then I was like, why is he first on the list? It's because D is Tinaf Better Claude.
He is.
Um,
Oh gosh.
Here's an interesting one that we haven't discussed but discussing today. Owen Farrell.
Right. I have always backed Owen Farrell as captain. And it is interesting that the third international coach in a row has named him England captain. Yet the whole of Twitter seem to think they know more about rugby than England. But I understand why people don't want him as England captain, because when he's not captain, he does look far freer on a rugby pitch. But I can see why he is captain as well.
I think so. I think he's the biggest leader the team's got. Um,
Mm.
I also wonder whether he should even be playing.
This season, if right,
No. Sorry, as in the fact that he put a shot with no arms on someone's head the other day, and yet
yeah,
just because England need him, suddenly he's free to play.
there's a lot of noise about that, isn't there? Because It was they classed it as mid-range, which is up to 6. He got it down to 4 originally because he said he was sorry, and then got it down to 3 because he went to go to a speed awareness course or some shit like that. So he's got it down to 3, and everyone was like, "Oh, come on!" They
Just
know
so happens to be
just
3 weeks until the Six Nations starts.
Six Nations.
Funny that.
And the RFU came out and said, "Well, actually, the score's not been announced. We don't know if he's in there." Now, if it wasn't for the fact he played for Sarries, I don't think people would be screaming for the fact that it's fixed. And if he wasn't involved in the whole salary cap thing, if he was just a 10 at Saints or someone like that, people would fall in love with him and want him to be on the pitch regardless. But should he be on there for that tackle? I don't know.
I think there's other people been scapegoated before.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. And I think that actually the reason it's so difficult for me to pin an answer on is because of I don't think necessarily Owen's got a problem with tackle height, but actually the overall issue is no one can pinpoint an answer because the referee in this season has been so fucking inconsistent. One ref will say that's a yellow, one says that's a red with no mid. So it's just not consistent enough across the board, which is why people get inside. There's been more sightings for higher tackles now and shots to the head than I've seen in a while because it's just not consistent refereeing. When you've got a bloke in a studio with a TV telling you what they can see and they still get it wrong week in, week out, it's quite worrying, really.
Yeah. Cowan Dickey's been left out.
Well, he's off to France, isn't he?
But
then Tom Willis is in. Jack Willis, who's playing over the channel. So it's a bit weird. It's a bit of a weird one.
I mean, we had this discussion the other day at work about how odd it is that the Welsh English RFUs won't allow players to play abroad.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're the 2 worst teams to watch.
Because they play English branded rugby, because that's what they all play.
All Welsh, Tom.
All Welsh rugby. I mean, Welsh rugby is even more boring than ours. At least we've got the likes of Marcus Smith and Ollie Hassel-Collins. They've got Louis Samet, who actually hasn't looked great. Plus, he's playing in the Prem for most of his.
Like football's the big contrast is Argentina obviously just won the World Cup, and there was some story about the fact that out of their 20 whatever man squad, is it 23 or 24, whatever they take nowadays, they were playing across like 9 nations. Only one of them played in Argentina.
Yeah.
And they're all bringing in like different thoughts and skills and talents and all this sort of culture, like making a cultural team. Whereas what England have got is, I mean, that is a massive squad for Six Nations.
It's like, it's a weird contrast, isn't it? Because you look, I mean, England football, a majority, apart from Jude Bellingham at the time, were homegrown and homegrown. Obviously, they're homegrown. That's the point.
But there's a difference there that we've got the best football league in the world, like soccer league in the world.
There is difference, but then I think they should go and be able to play abroad. But you go England, France, Australia, potentially New Zealand, and if you're a cash.
But how good would it be if we've got like forwards playing in South Africa?
Oh, it would be class. We would be absolutely class.
Yeah.
And I know we have a lot of South Africans over here. And we get more and more Pacific Islanders coming over like we have been in the last few years. It would be great if we sent them over there. But I just don't know if there's enough teams and enough want for English players to go over.
I think there would be. So especially the Super Rugby, when they've had English players, it's been Haskell at the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
It's been Andy Goode went to South Africa and just made us look like idiots.
Bag of sick.
For like 8 games, and then came back and tore up the championship with Worcester. And then, you've got, I can't even think, the 7 that used to play for Sale went over and played for Melbourne Rebels, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever his name was.
Yeah, there's been a few which have gone over, but not loads.
And they've done really well. Well, they've done quite well, apart from Andy Good. They've done quite well. Cipriani did really well over there.
Sips went well. I
So
mean, Charlie Davies did all right.
he did well in France, yeah. But I just find it odd. Like
Yeah.
I know I've known a few players to go from playing sort of Nat One Championship in England to go and play in the French second tier, and they've said it's absolutely class, and they learnt loads from it, and it's a totally different culture and approach. But we don't seem to be doing it at the top level, and it's not like the French team don't kick ass in the Champions Cup and stuff, is it? So it's not like we've got the best league in the world in the Premiership.
No, no, and you're right. I think although the Prem is becoming more exciting because of this no relegation thing at the minute, people are throwing the ball around like fucking ridiculously. I think you're right. The reason we play a boring brand of rugby is because we don't know any other way. I would be interested to see what happens when we get some of these lads back. The main one that stands out being Zach Mercer coming back next year, because he would have been on every coach's radar for the last few years. He's been in France. Yeah. If he wants to come back, the door's open at most clubs, I'd imagine, for him. But he's got the hands to play that nice French style of rugby, and if he's in that right team, I think he's going to Gloucester. It might not be best place for him, but hopefully, we'll get to the point where he'll be back. Where we'll have a young 9. We'll have probably Smith at 10. So if go Van Portfleet, Marcus Smith, and it could start to get a little bit more interesting. But I just don't think we're going to see much Marcus Smith this year.
What's your thoughts on Jack Van Portfleet?
Like him, but I don't think he's a starting 9. I don't look at any of our young 9s at the minute and go, you're starting 9. I would still start Ben Youngs.
And bring on Danny Kerr.
And I would over Danny Kerr as well. I like Danny Kerr, but again, he is like a little excitable puppet. You want him to come on in the last.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you start with Ben Youngs, then you bring on.
And finish with Danny Kerr, 100%. And that's what we're trying. We're trying to replace a Danny Kerr at the minute, and we haven't got anyone who's smart enough to. Because I think, and it's not because I'm a British fan, but I thought Harry Randall in the Prem can calm that down, as can Rafi Quirk. But at international level, they just don't seem to have that control over a game.
No.
Alex Mitchell, though. Alex Mitchell's there. Now, he is an experienced 9 for a relatively young lad. So we might see a lot more of him and Ben Youngs finishing a game out. It depends on the game, doesn't it? Because if it's a 3-point game, you're up 3 points in your last 5 minutes to win the Six Nations against Ireland. You want Ben Youngs on the pitch because the game is going to be slow, steady, and it's going to be won well. But if you're down 3 points, you want excitement. You probably put on Jack Van Portfleet to see if you can tear something up and force something.
It's nice to see another strong English name entering the fray, isn't it?
One before we move on, the one lad I want to touch on, and I'm sure he's probably about 10 years older than you. But Dan Cole back in the England squad. What a return he's made. What a return.
I mean, I've had the grace of playing with Dan Cole. He's more fun now than he was then. And he's not particularly fun now.
No, the only reason it looks fun on social media is because Joe Marler runs his Instagram page.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, fair play to him. Like he could have retired 3 or 4 times by now, and he's still doing it.
I love Dan Cole, and he will be someone that will always you'll remember him playing for England stuff. But when you're only allowed to make 5 changes to a squad, which is the rule that Steve Borthwick had, you're only allowed to change 5 names. I'm not sure Dan Cole's one of the 5 people I'm putting in that squad. If I'm honest, unless Borthwick knows he's retiring at the end of the year and he wants him to be there as a scrum coach at some point.
You've got Sinclair, Vunipola, and Genge.
Yeah.
And now we've also got Hayes and Cole in there.
Who's your starting props out of that?
I would probably start Genge.
Mm.
And what does Genge play?
The other one's Carl Sinclair.
Yeah, so I'll probably have Carl Sinclair on as well, and then
Yeah,
bring Mako and Dan off the bench. Joe Hayes, I know personally from meeting him a few times and been at some like sportsman's dinners with him. Don't really know him as a player. Don't think I've ever seen him play, or not knowingly I've ever seen him play.
he's been playing well for Leicester, but I think he's one for the future. Steve Borthwick will know him well. Is he a Nottingham lad? I think he might be a Nottingham lad.
He is, yeah. So he
Played
played in the same team as young Ed James, same NLD team as
Oh,
you.
did he? Did he? Oh, they're both as successful as each other then. But yeah, I imagine he's one for the future and just getting some experience on his belt. And you never know, we might see him against Italy. He's played well in the Prem, so why not?
Yeah, yeah.
But I think he may already be capped, but looking at this squad, like there is only 5 changes. The majority of that is Eddie Jones's squad, who is now obviously head coach at Australia. Are we shocked?
I'm a little bit. Only because they've tried this before. And Australia don't normally repeat things that don't work.
No.
Granted, 2003 was
20 years ago.
Yeah, all right. He was unbelievably unlucky.
Yeah.
I think that England-Australia final was probably the best ever World Cup final. I'd go as far to say. And it was close, and the two teams were by far and away at that point the best 2 teams in the world, I think.
Different breed of players.
And he was unfortunate not to win there. He's then gone on and done great things wherever he's gone. I think he definitely overstayed his welcome in England.
Mm-hmm.
We've been desperate to get rid of him for a while on here. But then again, Australia, they've had what's his name? The guy who was doing it before he joined.
Rene. No, it's not Rene.
No, not Rene. Sorry, the one before that who did the rugby league team and Italy at the moment, is it?
Oh yeah, what's his face? Go on, don't need his name.
Yeah, him. I wonder whether Australia might just be looking to sort of settle the ship a bit with someone that they know who can do it.
He's experienced enough to come in and settle things down, and people respect him, right? So Australia have not had the sexiest last decade of rugby, really. They've been one of the worst of the top nations. Even when we played bad, we still looked like we're going to beat Australia. So it's an interesting move. I think I wasn't shocked because I'd had that conversation with someone before it was announced, going, rumours are out, but it makes sense. It would be and I think there was also a rumour that he could have joined Warren Gatland's backroom staff, but just for the World Cup. And I only think you'd have ever done that to get one over on England, if I'm honest. But he's had a few interviews, Eddie Jones, and he said he effectively knew he was going after the first loss in the Six Nations last year. So he knew that it was going to be, after the World Cup final, that first loss after the World Cup final, he knew that it was a hard 3 years. But sometimes he says, he's not bothered. Other times he says he'd ignore the cucumber eaters and cucumber sandwich eaters from the RFU if they crossed him in the street. So it's like he clearly, he's hurt by it. So he wants some form of revenge.
He's ego driven, isn't he? He's
hugely.
So, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens with Australia's style of play. They've been a bit sort of all over the place from the stuff I've seen year to year the last few years. So if he turns them into this structured, boring side, I'm not sure many of the Australian players will go with that. That's not really their style.
It's not really the Aussie sports fan style, because me and Chloe have just been watching Breakpoint, which is the tennis thing on Netflix, and the first one opens with Nick Kyrgios, and they get behind him because Aussies get behind. I think he's a bellend, but people get behind him in Oz because he's exciting. He's not down the line. He's not boring. That's exactly what they want.
And that's what the Aussies like.
Yeah, and if it turns into that game, they're going to get a lot of noise from the stands, I imagine, as well. But yeah. I don't know how long the contract is there.
It'll be through this World Cup, I would have thought. and
And
then
then
see what happens.
see what we do next. Yeah.
Anyway, returning to community rugby, which is what we're obviously all about.
Yeah.
There's been a distinct lack of it, Tom.
See lack of it. Been a bit rubbish, really. There's been some. I know there's definitely been some games in lots, a few lower levels, when there's not much care for safety. As so, it's been local games, but severe lack. Obviously, I don't want to go back to it, but I broke my arm, and then I thought I'd making a comeback. And we had 2 weeks off before Christmas, and then 2 week Christmas break, and then another break, and then got absolutely bummed by some little team in Lincolnshire. So, but community rugby is great, mate. It's going really well.
Yeah, I mean, you were unfortunate with the side you took to North Highcombe. But then, we've got a few more players available in the last few weeks. We obviously got cancelled last weekend.
Yeah.
Well, you were meant to be playing Corsairs, weren't you? And they cried off beforehand.
They're out the lead. There's been a lot of drop. That is something I have noticed over the Christmas period. A lot of teams have dropped up from around the Midlands, have dropped out of the league because they've worked out they're not going to be able to field some teams, over for the last half of the season, which is interesting because these are teams which were playing at the start of the season and have suddenly not been able to get teams out. So interesting. But yeah, I mean,
we've now got a backlog of games. We and you were talking about it beforehand. We've got 3, and only 2 weekends to play them in. So we're going to have to add at least one now onto the back of the season, which is going to impede this
Papa John's
Pizza Cup or something pathetic, which doesn't bother me. So I've got golf to play, but the likelihood is, by the sounds of it and the forecasts that are coming through, we're going to probably miss out on another weekend at some point.
Yeah.
What are the RFU going to do, and why has it been set up like this?
Is there the possibility at level 5, for example? Will there be the question of could you play a midweek game to fit these in?
No, you couldn't do that because it's supposedly mainly amateur level. Especially for us, for example. I mean, even in the Midlands League, you've got teams travelling an hour plus, play games. But for us, imagine if they try and get us to play Alnwick midweek. I mean, I know they wouldn't,
won't we?
But I'd have to take 2 days off work. So
2 days out parenting.
Well, it'd be like 1 day in total, though, wouldn't it? Because I'd be back either side. But yeah, it's they seem to have sort of given us an early break, which was probably unnecessary, and then we've been unfortunate with a very cold period before Christmas, and that's really messed up their little structure. I think also one thing I'd say is the RFU managed to start the season without letting people know exactly what's happening with this cup competition.
I only remember really hearing about it mid-October, maybe start of November.
Yeah, and start of November, I think, is when we finally got a knowledge of what it actually was. So what you've condensed your season into the beginning of March. I think it's March 11th was supposedly the last league game. To play a competition that you hadn't organised or thought about until halfway through the season.
So what gets me about this is, so firstly, it's typical RFU. We think we know what's best for community rugby, yet we've never been to a community rugby club apart from with a video camera in the last 20 years. They're going, we've not got enough cash for community rugby, as opposed to let them have some of the hot weeks at the end of the season. Fuck it. Unless you've got a first team in the Papa John's tournament, you're not going to have any rugby at your rugby club from the start of March. There's a lot of.
I'm not sure about that. So I think second teams who are in the league system. Remember, not all. So you'd be entered into so Pavia's second team, for example, would be entered into that level of the cup competition. But you also have to remember that any teams that don't have a second team in the league system would have normal fixtures anyway. So it's not a case of that the rugby stops in March.
No, but if you Okay, maybe I've got it wrong. If you lose first game of the cup, we lose first game of the cup. Do we then fill the next any more weekends up with fixtures? Do we drop?
There's potential for them to then do sort of NLD or Knots Cup,
Right. Okay.
but that won't work if, for example, uh, we get knocked out in the first round, but Derby make it to the third.
And Bridgeford are there, and yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
Bridgeford
yeah.
make it through, or Scunny make it through. It's one of these things where, and we'll be in different competitions potentially as well. So
Yeah.
it's two tiers at our level of cup competition.
And me not knowing the answer to that as someone who is quite heavily involved in the running of a rugby team in the sense of our second team, 3 months, less than 3 months before the end of the season. So it's the 18th now of January. We still don't know really what happens. And it just shows the RFU have fucked up again by not asking people. No, I'm not saying ask us because we'll get it wrong, but reach out to community rugby clubs and go, have you got any ideas? Does this look good or should we stick to what it is?
Yeah.
And if they have, I'm not sure they've asked the right people, if I'm honest.
Well, I think, we play 22 games in the league, and rugby's getting at every level more and more physical than it has ever been at that specific level. So 22 games for me at my age is enough.
Yeah.
The younger lads, can play county or they can do all that other stuff. If there is like an under 25 cup competition or something like that would take up some of the weekends that aren't fixture full or whatever, you can make a lot more weeks off available, and then any block games are easily sort of filled in. Then I just think they've tried to like alleviate the pressure on the leagues, condense it into a shorter period, and then add a cup competition that seemingly nobody really wants. I mean, at level 5, after in the lower tier of what we could enter, you could be travelling to Cornwall.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting here complaining all day about travelling to Yorkshire.
Yeah, true. However, if it is sunny and you're going down to Cornwall, it's not a bad little weekend away, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, well, also, if it's sunny and you're taking us down to Cornwall, we're not going to be playing rugby, are we?
We sat on the beach drinking Rattler.
Yeah.
The dream.
Or Korev.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thought of there be no rugby past Easter. It's quite sad, really, when we've had a year off. But maybe that's just because I've not been playing. Maybe I've only played because I played 1 in 13. In 3 weeks' time, I might be going, do you know what? Fuck this. Let's end it in Feb. Let's call it a day. Let's hang up the boots for good.
Yeah, I just think they've got it wrong again. And they've had like 2 thoughts and they're counterintuitive. But there you go.
Maybe it's time we do launch our own league system. We thought about it before. We spoke about it on the old pod before we changed our name. Maybe it's time.
Mate, it's still in the back of my head.
We could do it. We could have a whole new rugby set up from community level all the way up to elite, and we could be rolling in it. Absolutely rolling in it.
Sky just got to get bored, mate. That's all.
That's it. And I think we should finish on that dream before we realise it's never going to happen, and we're never going to earn the big money. Well, you might. I'm never going to earn the big money.
Not through rugby.
Well, I don't know. Everyone needs a mascot, don't they? I've not prepped you, but you've had a number of weeks to think about it, Phil. Do you have any wise words?
Oh, I did have one, actually.
One word. I've got one wise word.
Hang on.
Intelligence. No wise words. Not even.
Mate, we're having a conversation. Oh no, it's gone. Something to do with does a dog wag its tail because it's happy or because it's like a response. It was a bit more complicated than that, but it was basically me and my mate were just trying to find amazingly poor quotes to tell each other.
Like the old dodgy Chinese proverbs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they were tagged. Yeah, no. I don't know if he wags his tail, but does a cat purr because it's got a sore throat? I don't know. Um,
Oh, it was. Does a dog shake your hand, or does it do it because it wants food?
Probably because it wants food. That's why I shake Chloe's hand because I'm hungry. Good question. Answer on a postcard. If you want to come on the pod, let us know. You know where to find us on the Instagram, Facebook, and anywhere like that.
Got a guest lined up for the next episode.
We've got a guest lined up for next episode. I don't know how confident I am behind that one. I'm sure we do. But we oh we do. Amazing. In that case, Phil, I'm excited for next episode. You'll tell me after this is on. And I'll talk to you in a bit.
All right, mate.
Bye.
Bye.